Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I keep re-filming and reshooting because I keep slurring my words today. So I'm just gonna force myself to, it'll be fine. If I start slurring my words, I'm just gonna power through it. Hi, welcome back. Today I'm gonna be sharing with you 24 books that I wanna read in the year 2024. Majority of these books I have not talked about before. For every single book that I'm going to talk about today, I don't know much about them. So I am going to share the important details that I do know about them, as well as maybe a phrase or a sentence or a quote or a certain thing I was told that made me want to read the book. I've broken up all the books into categories. We have 5 categories: fantasy, classics, romance, dark romance, and mystery/thriller. We're gonna start with fantasy. A few of these are high fantasy, but I'd say majority of them are romantasy. The first book that I have on here is, girl, I've mentioned I want to read this book so much. I will read this book. I have to. I really enjoyed the second half of the first book in the series, Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I heard this was the best out of all of them in the trilogy. The thing I liked the most about the first book in the series, Once Upon a Broken Heart, was it was just such a unique fairy tale. It wasn't a retelling. It wasn't a spin-off on a fairy tale we've been told since childhood. It was its own new fairy tale. The second book is The Book of Azrael. I have been recommended this book so much. This is a romantasy book. It's a paranormal romantasy. There's vampires in it. In my little notes, I wrote, now enemies older than time must put aside their differences and work together in hopes of saving both their world and every realm in between. Okay. The Poppy War. I think this is free on Kindle Unlimited. The first one is free on Kindle Unlimited. I have not read any books by this author yet. I have heard that the FMC in this book, she's not better than Aelin, but she's like a step up from Aelin, if you've read Throne of Glass. I read Throne of Glass 2 years ago. Aelin was such a powerful character in that book and I really looked up to her a lot. I have heard from a little birdie, that little birdie is TikTok, that the FMC in this book is like kind of a step up. Do not come for me if you've read both of these books and that is not correct, okay? I don't know anything. I haven't read any of these books before. That's just what I've heard. Nectar of War. This is a high fantasy book and I actually already started it, but I decided to leave it in this TBR video because I made this list last week and I didn't want to add a new book. Again, this is high fantasy. I'm 100 pages into it. It's from so many different people's POVs. I had to take notes because I'm not normally a high fantasy girly because I'm a dumb and I get confused very easily, but it's so good so far. So good so far. There is some romance in it. It's not heavy on the romance, and I don't think that's going to be the main focal point of the book, but there is a touch of romance in it. Not romantasy though. I wouldn't consider it romantasy. I would very strictly consider it high and epic fantasy. There's dragons in it, there's fated mates, there's wolves, I believe there's vampires, there's all these different realms, and it's just a really fascinating high fantasy book so far. The Bridge Kingdom. I was recommended this book back in December when I made a video talking about how I wanted a book with the trope where one of the main characters is being sent out to kill the other main character, but then they fall in love with each other. Could you imagine? I was recommended this book because apparently the MMC is supposed to kill her at first. Is this actually gonna happen? I don't know. That's just what I was told. Color me intrigued. This is a 4-book series though, so when I start this, it's gonna be a commitment. If I like the first book, I'm probably gonna wanna read it all the way through, but I'm intrigued. The Witch Collector. My cousin actually texted me the other day and she was like, have you read The Witch Collector? And I was like, no, what is that? It's about a witch. I think this one is more considered romantasy. She did tell me the first book, The Witch Collector, is kind of ass and you have to push through the first book to get to the second and the third book in the series, which are really good, which I feel like that's the case for a lot of fantasy series. The first book is just always like meh, and then the second and third and then whatever, they're so good. I'm gonna read The Witch Collector, try and get over the hump if there is one, and then we'll move on from there. This one is fantasy, but on the witchy side of things, which I really enjoy. I love everything that has to do with witches. Every year, the Witch Collector rides into town to collect a witch. And he takes them to the home of the immortal Frost King to remain forever. Why? Girl, I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is the main character, Raina, never gets picked to go to the Frost King. I wrote in my notes, there seems to be a lot of built up tension with this Frosty guy. And apparently the witch collector took Raina's sister, so now Raina has a goal to kill the Frosty King. I keep calling him the Frosty King. And the witch collector. But about the witch collector, I found this quote from the book. And it says, that man would burn down the world for Raina Bloodwood, and he's barely known her 2 weeks. I'm getting a little enemies to lovers. I'm getting the witch collector is actually a hottie. 2 more fantasy books. Hollow's Heathens. This is a paranormal romance, and what intrigued me to adding this book to my TBR the most was it has a lot of dark and gothic themes, and those are my favorite. I'm telling you, nothing hooks me more than telling me a book has dark and gothic themes. A lot of the reviews said that this book has the coziness of Twilight as well. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Fallon who was taken far away from home shortly after she was born, a home that held more than strange traditions and bizarre superstitions. Ooh, you're rhyming. 24 years later, she returned to Weeping Hollow, a town she'd only heard about in stories during restless nights under a marble moon. Once upon a time, there lived a mysterious boy named Julian, with a curse as old as centuries wrapped around his soul. Ooh. He was one of the 4 Hollow Heathens, the very dark creatures who caused the townspeople to live in fear. I'm intrigued. And the Blackwell name was stained with darkness and death. They called him a monster, cold and hollow. I can fix him. They said I shouldn't go near him, but still there was this aching pull to Julian that I couldn't escape. Girl, I think you can fix him. The last fantasy book that I want to read is Psycho Shifters. This is a 6-book series. I know it's more of a paranormal fantasy, enemies to lovers a little bit. After growing up with nothing, I've finally found my path to freedom. I'm a shifter, an elite soldier who transforms into a monster. All I have to do is survive. I didn't count on my 3, 6, 5 roommates. What the? Covered in tattoos, jeweled and horned. What the f? These are like no men I've ever dealt with before. Is this a reverse harem? Jax, Asher, and Cobra, that's an interesting name, are going to be devastated when they discover my truth. Just wait until they see my shifted form. Girl, I don't know. Girl, I don't know. The vibe that this series is giving me is the Bonds That Tie series. Moving on to romance. In the romance category, I have 7 different books. First, we have When Life Gives You Lemons. The FMC in this book has epilepsy, and the only reason why I'm saying that is because it's important to the storyline. At the beginning of this book, I do know she has her first seizure, and her ex-boyfriend just like up and leaves her after that because he's like, I can't handle that. And then he leaves her. I don't know if that necessarily like traumatizes her, but that probably fucks with her a little bit because what the f. This is a marriage of convenience or arranged marriage. I kind of consider them the same. And the MMC is not only a single parent to his adopted daughter, but he's also just a pretentious, hot, desi man. I was reading a little bit about the author, and in her author summary, it said, I'm a 20-something-year-old and I write about wealthy, pretentious desi men who are explicitly over-the-top pathetic for their girl boss, gaslighting, and gatekeeping women. If you're in the mood for arranged marriages, forced proximity, desperate pining, second chance romances, I can't say the f***ing word. I know what word in my head I'm trying to say, but it's not coming out because I'm slurring it. 2 lovers, you know what I'm trying to say. Just ignore me. And heated sports romances with a leading cast of diverse characters. Oh, wait. I forgot to say, Hollow Heathens. I own this. This was over here. The next 3 books that I'm going to talk about are also over here. And they're all 3 by E.J. Blaze. Bide, Unexpected, and Curveball. I know Unexpected and Bide are sports romances. I'm not positive if Curveball is. I have heard these are very, very good. And I believe they're all free on Kindle Unlimited. Unexpected, everybody in the reviews keeps saying they cried their eyes out. The tropes in this one are found family, brother's best friend, and slow burn. This one is also found family, opposites attract, he falls first, quiet boy, and then the FMC is confident girl. I love that dynamic. The MMC is kind of like a cowboy a little bit, and also a baseball player. Scary. Curveball is single parent age gap and also accidental pregnancy. I'm sad. I love the pregnancy trope. I love it. Someone in the reviews said that this kind of reminded them and gave them the same vibe as Wait For It by Mariana Zapata. Say less, that is quite literally one of my favorite Mariana Zapata books. Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I read the Brown Sisters series end of this last year and I thought it was so fun. This is a YA book by Talia Hibbert and I heard this one was even funnier than the Brown Sisters series. Okay, because I was laughing my off for most of those books. Brady, the MMC in this book, he is like an all-star football player at their school and he also has OCD, so we have a little bit of OCD representation within this book. I think there's a little bit of forced proximity in this book because they end up having to work together on the survival course. One of the tropes that I have been told is in this book though is rivals to lovers, and I love rivals to lovers. Raiders of the Lost Hearts. My friend Morg on Instagram posted a reel about this book. The two main characters are rival archaeologists. However, he makes every single one of his students read her dissertation as required reading. That's like weirdly unnecessarily hot. The last book in the romance category is Mickey Chambers Shakes It Up. I actually want to listen to the audiobook of this because it has really good narrators, and you're like, how do you know it has really good narrators? Because I've listened to the first chapter of it back in November. I started this book and I just got distracted and I never got back around to it. I want to listen to this audiobook because the start of it was so good. Tropes in this book are age gap. They work together. The FMC is feeling a little bit lost with her life, and so she ends up taking a job at this bar and the MMC is the bar owner. They're very much opposites. She's very much like fun, life of the party, and the MMC is very much old grumpy boss who's also hot. One thing I really like about this book is we have a chronic illness rep. I believe, I'm trying to remember exactly what the FMC has. I want to say it's PCOS, but I think I'm wrong. I'll correct myself here. Next category is classics. Don't worry, there's only 2 books in this and I'm not gonna talk on them for long. First is Crime and Punishment, and you're like, Heather, what? I'm currently reading Notes from the Underground and I actually like it. This is just it's just a classic. And then I put the Divine Comedy on here. So many people are gonna be like, girl, what? For this one, I think most people would be like, girl, what the fuck? First off, I own this book. I didn't bring it in here. It's like this thick. I'm gonna buy this copy though before I reread it because I've read it before. We'll get to that in a second. This one has pictures. I have read the Divine Comedy before. I had to read it for high school, the entire thing of it, and the reason why I want to reread it is because I did really appreciate reading it in high school and I found it just like fascinating. I find things with hell like really fascinating. After rereading 9000 Hellbent, where it talks about Dante and Virgil, that's such a brief thing in those books, but it just got me kind of re-interested in Dante and Virgil. I just, again, find stuff with hell very fascinating. Moving on to mystery or thriller. Yes, I saved dark romance for last because those are going to be the funnest ones to talk about. For mystery and thriller, I only have 3 books. First, we have If We Were Villains. I didn't know this was a mystery or thriller. This book has only been advertised to me as dark academia. All I know about this one is it quotes a lot of Shakespeare, and it apparently does it well. Mystery Scene on the back said this is a gripping, fascinating, unorthodox take on rivalry, friendship, and truth. Someone else on the back said that it echoes Donna Tartt's The Secret History, which we know I loved. The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. I plan to listen to the audiobook of this one. I do own it, but the audiobook I heard was really good and it had a good narrator, so I'm probably gonna listen to it on Spotify. I have read 2 of Lisa Jewell's books and I really liked them because they're less thriller and more mystery. I can't really do super intense thrillers. I love the mystery aspect that's in a lot of thrillers, but if it's too much on the thriller side, it makes me so wildly anxious. Lisa Jewell's books do not make me wildly anxious while I read them. Truly just a mystery. At the beginning of this book, Tallulah goes on a night out with her boyfriend. They have a baby together. They live at her mom's house. They leave the baby with her mom and they go out and they never return. And so the mom is kind of left wondering, what happened to my daughter? She would never abandon her kid like that. She was a young mother, she was a teen mother, but she was a good mom. Fast forward a year later, there's this girl, Sophia, that moves onto this property where they were last seen the night they disappeared. And there's a sign on a tree that says, dig here. And when she digs there, she unpacks something that was left behind from them. And it kind of opens up this entire new investigation, I guess. I don't know if it's necessarily like an investigation with police. It's probably just Sophia, this new character that's been brought in trying to figure out what happened to these kids. The last mystery or thriller is The Naturals. I still haven't read the Inheritance Games by this author. I heard this series was even better. This book series is YA, very much Criminal Minds vibes, which I love Criminal Minds so much. I believe there's 4 books in the series, and they have so many of these copies at my local library, so I will be reading them from there. Last but not least, we have the dark romance category, which is honestly kind of the funnest category because it's the most fucked up category. I have 4 books in the dark romance category. The first is called I Kill Killers. It was in one of the same categories on Goodreads as Butcher and Blackbird and the Mindfuck series. The FMC in this book kills serial killers, and she's also in a little bit of a game of cat and mouse with an FBI agent. I love the Mindfuck series so much because it's a serial killer and an FBI agent. I really, really, really hope this is good. In the reviews of this, it was mentioned that if you really like Dexter, then you will really like this. The second book that I put on here is Skin of a Sinner. I don't know why the name freaks me out. It just freaks me out. I believe they're childhood friend. The reason why I added this book to my TBR was simply because the review said it was deeply disturbing, but also crazy hot. And apparently there's a scene in this book where one of the main characters is like, "Did you get my letters?" And the other one's like, "What letters?" Next up, we have Sinful Redemption. This is the second book in a interconnected mafia series. I read the first book, Sinful Vows, I think last September. It was just a fun, mindless read. I'm gonna get back on a mafia kick at some point this year. It's coming. It's coming. I always get on a little mafia kick. And when I do, I'm gonna start back up with this one and hopefully like get through the entirety of the series. I feel like pretty much every mafia book, they kind of have similar plots. And they all kind of blend together, so it's just mafia romance. The last book of this video and of the dark romance category is Nocticadia. I have been recommended this book so much. It's romance, and guess what? It has dark and gothic themes. Sign me up. Fine, I'll read it. Sold. A lot of the reviews said it was very much like dark academia, gothic romance. The MMC in this book is a professor at a university and the FMC is a student. This could be really interesting and a great book for me given the dark and gothic themes, or I could fully hate it because of this like potential age gap that's gonna be here. It has to be done right. It has to be done right. I'm assuming it is because I've been recommended it so much, and a lot of people know how I feel about weird age gaps. And those are the 24 books that are on my TBR for the year 2024. If you have read any of these, let me know your thoughts, and thank you guys for watching today's video. I will see you next week.